Canny Tales.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Long ago, a kind queen dreamed of having a little girl. She wished for a child with skin as fair as snow and hair as dark as night. Her dream came true, and a beautiful baby girl was born. The queen named her Snow White and loved her dearly. But not long after, the gentle queen grew very ill and passed away. The king remarried a woman who was proud and vain. She owned a magic mirror and often asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror always replied, "You are the fairest of them all." The queen smiled, pleased, but her heart was not kind. Snow White grew up to be sweet, gentle, and beautiful. She sang to the animals and helped everyone she met. Her kindness shone brighter than her beauty. People all around loved her cheerful heart. But the queen's jealousy quietly grew stronger. One day, the queen asked her mirror the usual question. To her shock, the mirror said, "Snow White is the fairest of them all." The queen's pride twisted into rage and envy. She could not stand the thought of being second. She began to plot a way to get rid of Snow White. The queen ordered a huntsman to take Snow White into the forest. She told him, "Do not let her come back." The huntsman led Snow White far into the woods. But when he saw her innocent eyes, he could not harm her. "Run," he whispered. "Hide deep in the forest, and never return." Snow White ran through trees and thorns, deeper and deeper into the forest, until she found a tiny cottage hidden under the shade of tall ancient trees. She gasped in wonder, amazed that such a beautiful cottage could exist in the forest. Taking a careful breath, she gently pushed the wooden door open and peeked inside. Inside, she saw 7 small beds, each painted in a different rainbow color and lined up neatly in 2 rows, with soft blankets and fluffy pillows, looking cozy and warm. She took a few careful steps further inside, noticing the tidy kitchen with a small stove, tiny cups and bowls, and little pots hanging neatly on the wall. Exhausted, she lay across the little beds and soon fell fast asleep. As the sun began to set, 7 dwarfs returned home from their day working in the forest mines. They laughed and chatted along the path, but as they stepped through the door, they immediately noticed something was different. There, lying across their beds, was a sleeping girl. The dwarfs were surprised, but also curious and kind. They whispered among themselves, wondering who she could be. Snow White woke and told the dwarfs her story. They listened with wide eyes and warm hearts. "Stay here with us," they said. "You'll be safe." In return, she helped cook while the dwarfs prepared, and they set the table together. She swept the floors while they cleaned up their tools from the day's work. In the evenings, Snow White read stories aloud while some dwarfs made tea and others dozed off by the fire, comforted by her gentle voice. When the dwarfs left for the mines, she spent her mornings preparing lunch, packing warm bread, sweet fruit, and hearty soup into a basket. At noon, she would walk through the forest paths to the mines, where the dwarfs greeted her with cheerful waves. They all sat together on a sunny patch of grass for a picnic, laughing and sharing stories while they enjoyed the food she brought. The dwarfs excitedly showed Snow White the sparkling crystals and colorful gems they found, their eyes shining with pride. It was a peaceful life in the forest cottage. Back at the castle, the queen asked her mirror again, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied, "Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs." The queen clenched her fists and screamed in rage. Her plan had failed, and she would now take matters into her own hands. Early in the morning, before the sun had risen, the 7 dwarfs left for the mines. Snow White was alone at home, tidying up the cottage. Using dark magic, the queen disguised herself as an old peddler woman. She made a shiny red apple with poison hidden in just one half. Snow White looked up and saw the kind-looking woman at the window. "Try this sweet apple, dear," the woman said with a smile. Snow White took a bite, and fell to the ground, fast asleep. The dwarfs returned and found Snow White lying still. They tried everything to wake her. They waved stinky socks under her nose and even tempted her with delicious hamburgers. But she didn't move. She looked peaceful, as if only dreaming. With broken hearts, they built her a glass coffin. They placed flowers beside her each day and never left her side. One day, a prince came riding through the forest. He saw Snow White sleeping under the glass. Her beauty and stillness touched his heart. He gently kissed her lips and whispered, "Wake, dear Snow White." Slowly, her eyes fluttered open. She looked around, stunned, confused and silent. "Where am I?" she thought, trying to sit up, still dazed. The dwarfs were overwhelmed with joy. They jumped, cried, laughed, and hugged each other in relief. The prince knelt beside Snow White and asked for her hand. Snow White was shy, but her heart was full of thanks. They promised to visit the dwarfs often and never forget them. A new journey began, filled with hope and love. Back at the castle, the queen asked her mirror again. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror calmly replied, "Snow White is still the fairest of them all." In a rage, the queen punched the mirror, shattering its glass. With a flash of magic, the mirror pulled her inside and trapped her forever. Snow White and the prince returned to the castle in joy. The people cheered and decorated the streets with flowers. The dwarfs were honored guests at the celebration. Music, laughter, and dancing filled the halls. The dark days were finally over. Snow White and the prince were married under a golden sky. They ruled with kindness, wisdom, and open hearts. The magic mirror remained silent forevermore. The dwarfs returned happily to their quiet forest home. Outside their cozy forest home, the dwarfs put up signs, "No apples allowed." Little forest animals gathered to look at the signs, tilting their heads with curiosity. Each morning, they marched back to the caves, their lanterns glowing softly in the dark. They sang cheerful songs as they mined together, their laughter echoing through the tunnels. At midday, they sat by the cave entrance, sharing tea and sweet cupcakes under the warm sun. After lunch, they took a short nap outside the cave, resting peacefully in the gentle afternoon breeze. As the sky turned orange, the dwarfs packed up their tools and headed home. And they all lived happily ever after.